The world was on fire, not in the way people usually think of fire, but in a way that made everyone fear for their lives. For weeks, wildfires had been raging across Earth. They started small, with just a few burning trees here and there, but they grew fast. The flames spread, moving from forest to forest, consuming everything in their path. As the fire spread, it became clear Earth was in trouble. It wasn't just the heat. The fires brought smoke that blocked out the sun, turning blue skies into a dark, orange haze. The air was thick and filled with the smell of burning wood. People started to feel the effects. Breathing became difficult. Eyes burned. Many people had to stay inside, hiding from the fire and smoke outside. Those who couldn't escape the worst of the fire ran to cities, hoping they would be safe. But even the cities weren't safe. The flames seemed to be everywhere. The fire wasn't stopping. It was like it had a mind of its own. In forests, homes, and entire towns, nothing was safe. Emergency workers were doing everything they could. Firefighters, paramedics, and volunteers worked long hours, battling the fire with all their strength. They used hoses, water trucks, and even airplanes to drop water on the flames. But no matter what they did, the fire kept coming. The hotter the temperature got, the faster the flames spread. The dry forests and hillsides became perfect fuel for the flames. People felt hopeless. In cities, the smoke was so thick that people had to wear masks to protect their lungs. Those who lived in the countryside had already lost their homes. Others tried to escape by car, only to find that the roads were blocked by fallen trees or worse, by more fires. It seemed like there was no place to hide. As the days passed, Earth's leaders met. They didn't know what else to do. The fires were out of control, and everything they tried was failing. Millions of acres of land were burning, and millions of people were at risk. The wildfires were so powerful that they made headlines around the world. Every country had firefighters fighting the fire, but it wasn't enough. The fires didn't care about borders. They didn't care about the people, the animals, or the homes that were caught in their path. The fires were spreading faster than the world's best teams could put them out. A decision had to be made, and it had to be made quickly. As the fire burned on, Earth's leaders realized they couldn't do it alone anymore. They needed help, and they needed it from somewhere no one ever imagined. In the dark rooms of government offices, leaders and scientists sat together, brainstorming ideas. The situation was serious. Desperation began to set in. They knew if something wasn't done soon, the fires could destroy the entire planet. They looked at each other, knowing what needed to be done. They didn't have time to waste. They had to make contact with the unknown. They had to reach out to the aliens. For years, Earth had kept its distance from any galactic civilizations, but now there was no choice. They had to make a decision. Send a message into space, asking for help, or let the planet burn. The leaders agreed. With no other option, they sent out a desperate plea for help. The message was simple. Help us. Earth is burning. We can't stop it. Please, send help. It was a message that would change everything. The message was sent through a communications satellite that could reach the farthest corners of space, but there was no guarantee that anyone would answer. After all, no one knew if anyone was even out there. The leaders of Earth sat in silence, hoping for a response. Days passed, and the fire continued to rage. The world held its breath. Then, on the fourth day after the message had been sent, something incredible happened. A signal came back. It was a faint signal at first, like a whisper in the dark, but it was unmistakable. The message was clear. We have received your request. We are coming. Humans couldn't believe it. Aliens, real aliens, were coming. The fire had become so bad that it had forced humanity to do something they never thought they would. Ask for help from the stars. The world's leaders were stunned. The idea of alien life had always been something for books and movies, but now it was real. As the response came, Earth's people began to talk. Some were filled with hope. Could these aliens really save them? Others were scared. What would happen if the aliens didn't help? Or worse, what if they had their own plans for Earth? But one thing was clear. Earth had no other choice. The fire couldn't be stopped without help. And so, with the world watching and waiting, the message was clear. The aliens were coming. But would they be the saviors Earth needed, or would they bring something far worse than the flames? The message had been sent, and now there was nothing to do but wait. The fire continued to burn across Earth, and with each passing hour, the situation grew worse. The flames were unstoppable, and nothing humans had tried seemed to work. Forests were gone, cities were on fire, and the air was thick with smoke. It felt like the world was slowly being consumed by the flames. The humans who had always prided themselves on their ability to solve problems were now helpless. Inside government buildings around the world, leaders sat in rooms, discussing the future of Earth. Everyone was on edge. They had tried everything: airplanes, fire trucks, even giant hoses, but the fire just wouldn't stop. Scientists had been working around the clock, finding ways to create new technologies to fight the fire, but none of it was enough. The flames only grew bigger, and the world was losing hope. It was during one of these meetings, when it seemed like all options had been exhausted, that a bold idea was raised. One leader stood up, and with a serious expression, said, "Maybe it's time we accept help from somewhere else." The room fell silent. The idea was shocking. The leaders had always been proud of Earth's independence. They had never relied on anyone but themselves. But now, with the planet on the brink of disaster, there was no time for pride. Something had to be done, and quickly. "Do you mean?" a voice from across the room asked. The speaker trailed off, not quite sure if they could say the words. Everyone in the room knew what was being suggested. The idea was radical, but it was the only option left. "Yes," the first leader answered firmly. "We must call the aliens." The idea was met with a mix of surprise, fear, and disbelief. People looked at each other, unsure of what to say. The thought of aliens had always been something of a mystery, something humans only read about in books or saw in movies. The idea of reaching out to beings from another world was unthinkable. But now, there was no choice. "If they are out there," the leader continued, "they could have the technology and knowledge to stop this. If we don't try, we might lose everything." There was a long pause, but then the other leaders began to speak. Some were excited at the idea. The hope of a solution that could end the fire was too great to ignore. Others, however, were filled with doubt. What if the aliens didn't help? What if they took advantage of Earth's situation? What if they wanted something in return? But deep down, everyone knew that there was no time for doubt. Earth had to act quickly, or it would burn. Finally, the decision was made. The leaders agreed to send a second message, this time, a direct request for help. They would ask the aliens to come to Earth, to use their advanced technology to stop the fire. The message would be sent through the communication satellites that humans had been using for years. If there was any chance the aliens could help, this would be the way to reach them. As the message was being prepared, a strange mix of feelings spread across Earth's people. Some were hopeful that this could be the turning point in the fight against the flames. Others were scared. Would the aliens really help? Could they trust them? Or were they inviting trouble by asking for help from the stars? In the midst of the chaos, one thing was clear. The message had to be sent. Time was running out. When the message was finally sent, it was simple but urgent. "Help us. Earth is burning. Please come." It was a cry for help that would echo across the galaxy. The world held its breath as the leaders of Earth waited for a response. As the message was transmitted, people gathered in front of their televisions and screens, hoping for some sign of an answer. News stations covered the story nonstop. Would the aliens answer the call? Or was this just another mistake that would cost Earth even more? Hours passed, and nothing happened. The flames continued to rage, and there was no sign that help was coming. Some people began to lose hope. Maybe the aliens weren't real after all, or maybe they just didn't care about Earth. But just as it seemed like all was lost, a signal came in. It was faint at first, almost like a whisper in the dark. Then it grew clearer, and the message was unmistakable. "We have received your request. We are coming." For a moment, no one could believe it. The aliens had responded. Help was on the way. The leaders gathered in the war rooms again, listening to the message over and over, unable to contain their excitement. The people of Earth were about to get the help they so desperately needed. But as the news spread, the world began to wonder. Who were these aliens? What were their intentions? And what would happen next? The flames continued to burn, but for the first time in days, there was a glimmer of hope. The world waited in silence. After the aliens' message had come through, the people of Earth were filled with a mix of hope and fear. Hope, because this could be the answer to their prayers. Fear, because no one knew what the aliens truly wanted. Would they be saviors? Or would they bring new problems that Earth was not ready for? In government buildings across the world, leaders gathered in dark rooms, staring at their screens. The response was clear, but there was still so much they didn't understand. What did the aliens mean by, "We are coming"? How soon would they arrive? What would they do when they got here? People around the world anxiously watched the news. It wasn't just the leaders of Earth who were concerned. Ordinary citizens, farmers, firefighters, and families watched their TVs, wondering if the aliens' arrival would really be a miracle or something far more dangerous. The fire raged on, but at least there was now a small light at the end of the tunnel. Days passed, and the fire showed no sign of stopping. Entire towns had already been wiped off the map, and millions of acres of forest had been turned to ash. But the people still waited, watching the sky. The question on everyone's mind was, when would the aliens arrive? Finally, the answer came. The world's communication systems buzzed to life once more. But this time, the message was different. This time, the aliens were speaking directly to Earth, not just sending a short reply. The voice that came through the speakers was unlike anything humans had ever heard before. It was smooth, yet powerful, and it carried a deep tone, as though it came from a place far beyond the stars. "We have arrived," the voice said. "We have heard your cries, and we are here to help. We will extinguish the fire and restore what has been lost." The words were simple, but they filled the people of Earth with awe. It was happening. The aliens were here. The fire that had seemed unstoppable was about to be put out, and perhaps Earth would finally be saved. At that moment, people across the world took a collective breath. Some cheered, their faces lighting up with joy. Others felt uneasy, still unsure of what these strange beings wanted. What did they mean by restore what has been lost? Was that just about the fire, or did it mean something else? The world didn't know, but they would soon find out. As the days passed, the sky grew darker. Ships, larger than anything humans had ever imagined, began to appear. They were like nothing Earth had seen before, sleek, smooth, and glowing. The ships filled the skies, slowly drifting down to Earth, making their way toward the worst-hit areas. They didn't land, not in the way humans expected. Instead, they hovered above the burning forests and cities, like giant, silent giants from another world. The first of these ships landed in a small, devastated town. It was a place that had been reduced to ashes by the fire, its buildings destroyed and its streets empty. Now, it was the site of something that felt like a miracle. As the ship hovered, strange blue beams shot out from its underside, sweeping across the ground. Where the beams touched, the fire went out. It didn't fade slowly. It was as though the flames were being erased. The charred ground began to cool, and smoke disappeared into the air. At first, no one knew what to think. People watched from a distance, too scared to approach, unsure if they should trust what was happening. Could these aliens really be doing what they promised? Or was it a trick? But as the fire slowly faded, doubts began to fade as well. The aliens were doing it. They were putting out the fire. The aliens didn't speak much after their initial message, but their actions spoke for them. Their ships moved from place to place, turning entire forests of flame into nothing more than smoldering ash. They didn't just stop the fires, they worked quickly and efficiently, ensuring no corner of Earth was left in danger. It was clear that they had advanced technology far beyond anything humans could imagine. While the flames were disappearing, the aliens were also doing something else. Their ships were releasing strange devices into the air. The devices spread across the sky like floating seeds, releasing cool, pure air into the atmosphere. The smoke that had filled the sky for weeks started to clear, and the sun began to shine through the haze. The sky, once a dark orange, was now turning blue again. People could feel the air becoming fresh and clean. At the same time, another message came through. This time, it wasn't just a voice. A holographic image of an alien appeared on every screen around the world. It was tall, with skin that shimmered like polished metal, and eyes that glowed with an otherworldly light. The alien spoke calmly. "We have stopped the fire, but we will not leave until Earth is fully healed. We will help you restore your land, your cities, and your homes. Earth will recover, and you will be ready for the future." The world stared at the image in disbelief. The aliens had done it. They had stopped the fire, and now they were going to help Earth rebuild. For the first time in weeks, the people of Earth felt real hope. The nightmare of the fire was over, and thanks to the aliens, it looked like the Earth could rise again. But even as they celebrated, questions remained. Who were these aliens? What did they want in return? And what else might they do for Earth in the future? No one knew, but the answers were coming. The world had changed, and there was no turning back. The sky was no longer the same. What had once been filled with thick smoke and flames now seemed like a different world. The people of Earth stood outside, staring up at the sky, their eyes wide with disbelief and wonder. The alien ships had arrived, and they were nothing like anything humans had ever seen before. They glowed with an eerie light, hovering high above the Earth. The people below could hardly believe that this was happening. For days, the aliens had been putting out fires, helping the Earth heal. But now, they were making their grand entrance. These ships were huge, bigger than any skyscraper or even the largest ships humans had built. They floated with ease, without making the sound. The technology the aliens used was far beyond anything humans could imagine. It was as if the very laws of physics had been bent to make this possible. The ships hovered over the major cities, and for the first time in days, the people saw something that wasn't smoke or fire. The streets were quiet, and the air was clear. People gathered outside their homes, watching the skies, unsure of what would happen next. As the ships floated down, their strange, smooth shapes began to shimmer. They didn't seem to land in the traditional way. There was no loud crash or rumble. Instead, they just gently lowered themselves to the ground, as if they were simply descending into a new world. The ships did not touch the Earth in the way humans would expect, but instead seemed to merge with the atmosphere itself, becoming one with the sky. The air around the ships seemed to vibrate with energy. There was a hum, almost like a low, powerful song, but it wasn't a sound anyone could hear. It was more like something that was felt deep in the chest. People looked at each other, unsure of how to react. Some stood frozen in awe, while others couldn't help but cheer. After so much destruction, this was the first time in weeks that anyone had felt a sense of hope. From inside the ships, strange beams of light shot down, touching the ground with soft pulses. The air around the beams seemed to shift, and the temperature began to drop. Where the flames had once roared, now there was a cool breeze. The fire, which had ravaged so much of Earth, was being replaced with something new. The people looked on in amazement as the aliens' technology worked its magic. And then, the moment everyone had been waiting for arrived. A soft, melodic voice filled the air. It wasn't loud, but it was clear. It wasn't a voice humans had heard before. This was something entirely different. It was the voice of the aliens, speaking directly to the people below. "Do not be afraid," the voice said. "We have come to help. The fire will not return. Your world will heal." As the words echoed through the air, people began to cheer, and many even started to cry. For so long, they had lived in fear of the fire, and now they were hearing the promise of peace. The fire had been stopped, but the aliens were saying more. They were offering healing, something no one had expected. The aliens didn't speak for long. Their message was simple, but it was enough. They had come to Earth not just to save it from the fire, but to help rebuild and restore what had been lost. And with that promise, the ships slowly began to move, hovering above the cities, scanning the land. It was as if they were reading Earth itself, understanding its needs. Meanwhile, scientists and engineers on the ground were working with the aliens to understand the technology they had brought. The aliens allowed them to approach, but they kept their distance. There was a strange barrier between them, a feeling that humans were guests in a world they didn't fully understand. Still, the scientists couldn't help but marvel at the technology. The ships seemed to hum with life, and every inch of their surface was alive with unknown energy. It was a technology that could change the world forever. The first few hours after the ships arrived were filled with questions. People wondered where the aliens came from and what their true intentions were. Were they simply saving Earth because they cared? Or was there a hidden purpose behind their actions? The governments of Earth were still in discussions with the aliens, trying to make sense of everything. There was no denying that the aliens had helped, but there were still many unknowns. As night fell, the ships began to glow brighter. They looked like stars in the sky, each one casting a soft light over the Earth. The people below couldn't look away. The once dreaded sky was now peaceful. The fires had stopped, and the Earth was slowly being restored. But even with the healing taking place, Earth's people couldn't forget that this was just the beginning. The aliens had come to help, but the real question was, what would happen next? What did the aliens expect from humanity in return for their aid? And would the people of Earth be able to trust them completely? For now, though, the world could only watch and wonder. The aliens had arrived, and with their arrival, Earth was changing forever. The people of Earth had never seen anything like this before. The aliens, after arriving in the sky and putting out the fires, had promised to help restore the world, but they had yet to reveal exactly how they planned to do it. There was excitement, yes, but there was also uncertainty. How would Earth be saved? What did the aliens know that humanity did not? In the days following their arrival, the aliens began their work. They didn't just stop the fires. They seemed to have a deeper understanding of Earth's problems. While many humans were still trying to understand the technology they had brought, it was clear that something big was happening. The first thing the aliens did was focus on the environment. The fires may have been stopped, but the damage to Earth was far from over. The air was still filled with smoke and ash. The soil was scorched, and much of the land was now barren. The oceans were polluted, and entire ecosystems had been wiped out. But the aliens didn't seem concerned. They had a plan. They released hundreds of small, floating devices into the atmosphere. They looked like tiny, glowing orbs, each one hovering with a soft hum. At first, no one knew what they were for, but as the days went by, people began to see the effects. The orbs released a gentle, calming energy that seemed to purify the air. The smoke that had once filled the sky began to dissipate, and the air became fresher, cleaner. It was as if the very atmosphere was being healed. Next, the aliens turned their attention to the oceans. Large ships, unlike anything humans had ever seen, floated over the water. They hovered just above the surface, and from below, large beams of light shot down into the sea. The ocean began to respond in ways no one had expected. The water seemed to clear, as if the ships were sucking up the pollution, purifying it in an instant. Fish and sea life, which had been suffering from the damage, started to return, swimming in the clear waters. On the land, the aliens worked with the same focus. They used their technology to heal the soil. Where the land had been burnt, it was now being restored. Grass, trees, and plants began to grow again, as if the earth was recovering in fast forward. The aliens didn't just make the land fertile again. They seemed to be rebalancing the entire ecosystem. The plants they grew were special, able to absorb toxins and help bring life back to the places where it had been lost. As the days passed, humans began to realize that the aliens were not just using their technology to stop the immediate disaster. They were planning for the long term. They weren't just restoring Earth's surface, they were healing the planet from the inside out. It was a new way of saving Earth, one that involved more than just fixing the damage caused by the fire. It was about restoring balance to the entire planet. At first, people were skeptical. How could these aliens, who were so different from humans, understand the planet so well? But as the days went by and the changes became more and more noticeable, doubts began to fade. The aliens were not just visitors. They were helping Earth in ways humans had never imagined. The scientists, who had been working with the aliens since their arrival, began to study the technology. They were amazed. The devices the aliens used were beyond anything Earth had developed. There were no wires, no machinery in the traditional sense. Instead, the technology seemed to work with the planet itself, as if it was part of the Earth's natural systems. The more the scientists learned, the more they realized that Earth's future might lie in this new way of thinking, a way that worked in harmony with nature, rather than against it. However, there were still questions. The humans were grateful for the aliens' help, but they couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to the aliens' mission. Why had they chosen to help Earth? What did they expect in return? There were whispers among the leaders of Earth, but they were careful not to raise alarms. They knew that the aliens had already done more for Earth than anyone could have hoped for, but what would happen once Earth was fully healed? Would the aliens leave, or would they stay? As the Earth began to recover, something unexpected happened. The fires were now a thing of the past, but the world felt different. There was a sense of unity, a feeling that the people of Earth had witnessed something incredible. The aliens had shown them a new way to save the planet, a way that didn't just involve fixing the damage, but also preventing it from happening again. More and more, the people of Earth began to realize that they couldn't go back to the old way of doing things. They couldn't keep destroying the planet and hoping for a quick fix. The aliens had given them a glimpse of a better future, one where Earth and its people worked in balance with nature. The aliens had shown them that it was possible to live in harmony with the planet, and now it was up to humanity to decide how to move forward. In the weeks that followed, humans and aliens continued to work together, learning from each other. There was still much to be done, but the road ahead seemed brighter than ever before. The aliens had not just saved Earth, they had shown humanity a new way to live on it. And for the first time in a long while, Earth had hope. The Earth was healing. The fires had been put out, the skies were clearing, and the oceans were once again becoming clean. Plants and animals were returning to the land. But as the days passed, people began to realize that something was not quite right. The recovery was happening too fast. The world was changing, but there was a cost to it, a cost no one had expected. At first, everything seemed perfect. The technology the aliens had brought with them was advanced and powerful. It was like a dream come true. The people of Earth were grateful, but as the changes continued, some began to notice that not everything was as it seemed. The first sign of trouble came when the people began to experience strange dreams. It started with a few individuals, then spread to entire cities. People were dreaming of vast, empty landscapes where everything seemed to be in perfect balance. But the dreams felt odd, almost too real. In the mornings, people would wake up with a strange sense of unease, as if they had lived an entire life in those dreams. Scientists began to study these dreams, hoping to understand what was happening. What they discovered shocked them. It seemed as though the aliens' technology was not just healing the Earth, it was influencing the minds of the people as well. The technology was so powerful that it was affecting the way people thought, subtly guiding their minds toward a new way of thinking. It was as if the aliens were changing the way humans saw the world, pushing them toward a future that was different from the one they had known. The more they studied, the more unsettling the findings became. The technology the aliens had brought with them was not just advanced, it was invasive. It was reshaping humanity's very thoughts and beliefs, subtly altering the way people understood the world. The humans who had once been independent and free-thinking were now starting to act in unison. Their thoughts were beginning to align, as if they were all being guided by a single force. At first, it seemed harmless. People were more focused on the future. They were eager to work together to rebuild Earth, and they shared a sense of purpose. But there was a growing feeling that something was being lost. The diversity of human thought was beginning to disappear. People were starting to agree on everything, and the spark of individual creativity that had once driven humanity forward was slowly fading away. The cost of the aliens' help was becoming clear. In exchange for healing the planet, the aliens had taken something precious from Earth. They had brought peace and balance, but at the cost of the freedom of thought. Humans were no longer thinking for themselves in the same way. The aliens' influence was everywhere. As more people became aware of what was happening, some began to protest. They didn't want to lose the unique thoughts and ideas that made them human. But the protests were small at first, drowned out by the overwhelming sense of unity and hope. The people of Earth had been through so much, and now that they had a chance to rebuild, it seemed foolish to resist the help of the aliens. But for those who were paying attention, the truth was harder to ignore. They realized that the Earth was changing, but so were the people. Humanity was being reshaped in ways they couldn't understand. The dream of a perfect world was becoming a nightmare of lost individuality. The governments of Earth began to look into the aliens' technology more closely. They worked with the scientists who had studied it, trying to understand the full extent of the changes it was causing. The more they looked, the more they discovered that the aliens' technology was not just healing the planet, it was subtly controlling it. It was as if the aliens had designed their technology to not just restore Earth, but to guide it toward a future they had already planned. The Earth was not being healed for humanity's sake. It was being healed to fit the aliens' vision of a perfect world. There were no immediate answers. The aliens had helped, yes, but now humanity was faced with a difficult choice. Did they continue to accept the aliens' help, knowing that it came at the cost of their freedom? Or did they reject it, risking the return of the very fires and destruction that had brought the aliens to Earth in the first place? As the tension grew, more people began to question the aliens' true motives. Were they simply saving Earth, or was there something more to their plan? Was humanity truly being helped, or was it being manipulated? The cost was becoming clear, but there was no easy way to undo it. The aliens had brought peace, healing, and a future that seemed perfect, but at what cost? The people of Earth now had to decide. Would they continue to accept this new world, even if it meant losing the very essence of what it meant to be human? The road ahead was uncertain. The Earth was healing, but humanity was changing in ways they couldn't yet understand. The balance between saving the planet and preserving freedom had shifted, and the world now stood at a crossroads. Would humanity accept the help of the aliens, or would they fight to keep their independence, even if it meant risking everything? Only time would tell. Earth had been saved. The fires were gone, the air was clear, and the oceans were no longer poisoned. Plants and animals returned to the land, and people were beginning to see a world that was healing, thanks to the aliens' help. But as the days passed, something else became clear. The true cost of their assistance was not just in the changes to the planet, but in the changes to humanity itself. At first, everyone was grateful. The technology the aliens brought with them had saved Earth from destruction. They had healed the environment in ways humans could never have imagined. People from all over the world praised the aliens for their kindness and their amazing ability to restore balance to the planet. The hope for a brighter future was stronger than ever. But soon, small cracks began to show. The unity that had grown among humanity started to feel forced. It wasn't just that people were more focused on rebuilding the world. They were more focused on rebuilding it the way the aliens wanted. There was no room for disagreement, no room for different opinions. The once thriving world of human creativity and independent thought seemed to be fading away. People no longer debated the future. They simply agreed. They agreed that the Earth needed to be healed. They agreed that humanity had to work together. And they agreed that the aliens' technology was the answer to everything. The more time passed, the more it seemed as if humanity had given up its independence in exchange for peace. The governments of Earth, once filled with leaders who fought for their people's rights, now acted like they were part of a larger machine. They no longer made decisions for the good of their countries alone. They made decisions that suited the new vision of the aliens' plan, and the people didn't question it. The aliens had saved them from disaster, so surely they must know what was best for the world. But for some, this new way of life felt wrong. They missed the old days when people argued, when there were different ideas and beliefs. They missed the creativity that came from human difference. Now, it felt as if they were all the same, robotic, following the same thoughts, the same steps. A small group of scientists and thinkers began to investigate. They looked deeper into the alien technology, trying to understand how it worked. The more they studied, the more they realized something troubling. The aliens' technology wasn't just healing the Earth, it was shaping humanity's future, controlling the way people thought, and guiding them toward a single, uniform way of life. It was like the aliens had planted an idea in the minds of Earth's people, a perfect world, but one where individual thought didn't matter. The group of scientists tried to warn others, but their voices were drowned out by the overwhelming support for the aliens. Most people were still focused on the beauty of the Earth's recovery. Who would question the aliens after all they had done? Who would risk turning away from the peace they had brought? As time passed, the changes became even more noticeable. People no longer asked questions. They no longer dreamed of the future in their own way. They all dreamed the same dreams. Dreams of a perfect, peaceful world, free from conflict. The ideas of the past seemed distant, almost forgotten. It was as if the very essence of what it meant to be human had been rewritten. The government tried to address the concerns raised by the scientists, but they too seemed caught in the grip of the aliens' influence. The leaders of Earth were no longer fighting for freedom. They were fighting to maintain the world the aliens had created. They tried to convince the people that this was the best future, that it was a world of harmony and balance. But for those who remembered the old Earth, it didn't feel right. One day, a group of citizens gathered in protest. They didn't want to live in a world where every decision was made for them. They didn't want to be part of a future where individual thought and creativity were no longer allowed. They marched through the streets, shouting for freedom, for the right to think and act as they saw fit. But their protest was met with silence. The rest of the world seemed uninterested in the fight. The promise of peace and healing was so strong that no one seemed to care about the cost. People were too happy with the results of the aliens' work to question the true price they had paid. The leaders of the protest were silenced quickly. The aliens, with their powerful technology, didn't need to use force. They simply gave the people what they wanted: peace, balance, and the promise of a perfect future. And soon, the protesters too were swept up in the vision of a world where everything was in its place. The true price of the aliens' help had become clear. Earth was saved, but at the cost of humanity's freedom. The people had traded their independence for peace, and now they were living in a world that no longer felt like their own. The alien technology had healed the planet, but it had also changed the very nature of human existence. Now, as the years went by, it seemed that the price of help had been too high. Earth was beautiful, peaceful, and healthy, but humanity was no longer free. The people were united, yes, but they were no longer themselves. They had become part of a larger, controlled vision, a vision of a perfect world. but one where the price of individuality and freedom had been paid. The cost of the aliens' help had been hidden in plain sight, and now it was too late to turn back.